What's up, guys? Moon Priestess returns with the third set of the Grim Cluster, and it's the third set that's gonna, it's gonna be rotated out with the rest of the Grim Cluster, but it's probably the set I'm gonna miss the most. I think Moon Priestess Returns was like the most impactful set I think we've ever had, up to maybe Twilight Wander, because I think that set was actually really good as well. Just single-handedly being so useful and full of so many good cards. It had a lot of meta impacting cards and just so many cards that like even today changed the way people play Force Duel in general. And one of those cards is Little Red the Pure Stone, which this was kind of the first time they also started getting like really creative with like their box reprint kind of things. So normally we had like full art dual stones and everything like that, but with Little Red the Pure Stone, it was the first time where they just printed like different colors of the same stone. And then we also had the full art pantsless Cheshire in this set. So not only was it like the first like really big chase set where everyone was so excited to get all of these like different cards, but it was just really cool to see like, you know, a reprint of Cheshire, which is like one of the most, like probably the best card to pull in all of Force Duel, other than maybe like an Uber. And it's even more expensive than some Ubers, which is pretty crazy too. And it was just such a good set. And why Little Red the Pure Stone was like so impactful, and why this set stones in general was so impactful, is because it was kind of the first set that had like the possibility of all. So Little Red the Pure Stone can obviously, when it comes into the play, you get to pick a color and it becomes that color, and it becomes that color for the rest of the game, and you can use it to pump. So we were used to stones like Grus Ballesta and Almerius, where you have to pay like itself and another color of the same. So like Almerius is it, you know, you tap it in a light, or Grus Ballesta you tap it in a black to gain an effect. But Little Red the Pure Stone was like the first stone we got where it was just like you tap this one stone and you get something. And the +2/+2 off the stone was insane. Like if you hit the stone and your opponent didn't, it was almost like you had so much advantage, because if you're playing the same deck, your cards are trading with theirs, but theirs aren't. I mean, your cards are beating theirs in every trade, and they're forced to not be able to block unless they lose their card. So I think like this card was the first card that really made like stones in general really insane and like really relevant. And it was more than just like having a dual stone, which, not that this card is a dual stone, but that's what we were used to. And this was just the first card where I was like, whoa, like I get some pretty cool effects for like just tapping this card. So I think Little Red the Pure Stone is probably like one of the most relevant cards that we're gonna lose. It's not seen so much play now, but that's where the Magic Stone of Moonshade and Magic Stone of Moonlight come out. So with the addition of all the moon in the newest set for Moonlit Savior, a lot of people have just been relying on these stones over the stones of like the Moonbreeze Memoria and the Black Memoria for Gilapis and Kaguya. And it's understandable why, because if I have to pay 200 life for Moonshade and I get all the colors in the game, then, you know, it's kind of like a small price to pay. It does add up quite a lot. I've actually been kind of annoyed of Moonshade lately, because I've been trying to use it in every single deck, but it keeps getting really like hard to manage. But generally, like the idea of having every color at the price of life is kind of worth it, because if you're not playing consistent when you're playing multiple colors, you're going to get attacked more often because you're unable to play your cards. And if you're going to be taking damage anyway, you might as well be using it to set up your plays perfectly. And then Magic Stone of Moonlight, these two is kind of the first thing of how I made my 6-stage deck. For anyone that remembers, like way back when that first came out, I would use Liberator of Wind to stack Magic Stone of Moonshade, and then I was using 4 Moonlight. So then at that point, because Moonshade was my first stone, every Moonlight would have every single color as well, and it was guaranteed because I was able to stack Moonshade. And so these stones were just like, excuse me, sorry. I'm like, I think getting sick again. For some reason, I'm literally always getting sick, and it's like starting to get really hot in LA, so it's kind of a bummer. I feel like I'm going to be sick at like the worst weather. But anyway, these stones were like the most relevant stones I think that like came out at one point. It really changed the way people like were considering deck building, and it just gave you so many more options. The game before this was very like, you know, drop Gretel, ramp if you're playing green, and if not, you were just using all these like one color decks or maybe a splash of something else, unless you're also playing like Grim. But it was just like, this made it where it's like, oh wow, like we have so many more possibilities now, which I think is just really good. And then creature wise, I think one of the most relevant creatures in this set is Speaker of Creation. It's one of those cards that not only sees a lot of play today because of Alice's World, but it was one of those cards where as the game goes further, this card would just get better and better because with the release of new field editions, this card just gets more targets. When Barrier of Shadows came out, a lot of people were actually considering, well, this is great because if I run Ruler's Moria now, I have access to black, and searching something as strong as Barrier of Shadows with Speaker of Creation is just insane. And then originally when Abel came out, Abel was actually it seemed like it was going to be a really, really strong card because we didn't have any board wipes. Awakening to the End was the closest thing that came out in this set, but no one was really running it at one point. And Abel was supposed to be really good, but he kind of just fell off the charts and people didn't really care about it too much anymore. But it's also one of those cards, I agree, that if the game keeps on going further and light gets cards that are kind of like cantrips where if you play it, it replaces itself. Like imagine like a light Cheshire Cat or a light Rookegg kind of card. Being able to sack those cards to summon Abel and blow up the field, and you didn't lose any advantage because you gain advantage from what you tributed, puts you in a really, really, really good spot. And I think it's one of those cards that don't see play now, but it actually could be a strong option in the future. So maybe if the set ever gets rotated out or anything, it's possible that we see that again. Alice, the Guardian of Dimensions. Of course, she's in the background, but this is the alternative art, but it's the same card. This card is I think the most underrated card in the entire game. I even sometimes find myself never using this card, but every single time I play against it, I want to shoot myself in the face because if nobody really plays Flame of the Outer World anymore, and this card is in perfect flame range, and that's why it was never really good because that card used to be played a lot. But if they don't have flame and you have this on the field, it's none of your creatures are dying just because it's going to spam able to just give everything imperishable, and it gets really, really hard to deal with after a while. I remember Valentina players were using this when SKL dropped, and they would use Shangri-La, so it would go to 9/9 if not more, and so you have a 9/9 flyer that gives either removal or target attack. Removal or the imperishable. The untargetable. Sorry, and it's this huge body that you can't kill because you have to use a card like Stoning on it or something, and then it just responds with its effect on itself. So not being able to flame this card is the scariest thing on the field, and you can't do anything once she's just sitting there protecting everything. It gets really, really insane. And then we had the addition of the first 6 ages too, which were Feetsing and Zero. This was the introduction of the Quickcast Mechanic. We didn't have this prior to the set, and that's also what made just the game completely crazy too. Originally it was just, I do this on my turn, keep mana open for counters or a kill spell, and then you do that and we repeat. This set was the first set where it was if you're playing green now, being scared of getting Zeke's Cakestone or Feetsing was completely irrelevant. There was times where Abdul was always really hard to kill, and in my 6 age deck I was using Thunder. And there was times where they would attack with Abdul, and I would just drop Feetsing and block and then Thunder it, and they would just die. And even though I don't get the enter effect, just the quick cast alone was so good to be able to block stuff and just get extra damage in for final kills, or block and then flame something. So, and then Zero was always really strong too, because if you drop Zero against the Menastophles and then block it and then flame it, you're gonna take 500 life, but you kill the Meph and they can't respond. So I think just the Quickcast mechanic is one of my favorite mechanics in the game. I'm actually really sad that we don't see it too often. I'm really hoping that in a way we get more of it, at least the Alice avatar of the 7 lands. She had quick cast, but she's such a high cast you don't really see it happening. I feel they just added that on there because they wanted Tree to have just something else to maybe help if they get rid of the first Alice and you happen to have mana open. But generally quick cast on that card isn't really relevant, and I'm really hoping we get more of them. So it's possible they'll just introduce more mechanics too, and we don't have to see more of just these old ones. But I typically like the way the quick cast works. And then Haster. Haster was one of the best Cthulhu's to start off with. The Cthulhu's in general didn't really get that good until Rookegg came out, because Rookegg and Guinevere came out in the same set, and that addition to red just made it insane. It kind of gave black what it was missing too when you mix them together for consistency and just being able to have the perfect tribute material. But generally this card is just a really, really good card. Being able to cast, on turn 2, be able to play a card that's going to remove their card, give you a 7/5, and then you got to do it just for like plussing off small stuff that you attributed is really, really strong. And it's kind of seen that Incarnation has like remained the best mechanic in Forcible, I believe, because like Alice World is literally Adam Broly. Like Morgiana and Cheshire Step are like that much more relevant in that deck, and I understand. But most of the plays come from getting to the Adam Broly, tributing your little stuff, having a relevant body, and then still being able to plus off that as well. So I think Incarnation is just, it makes Force Duel fast, and it's like the only thing that doesn't cost mana essentially, other than like Regalias. And if you're tributing the right material and plussing off what you're tributing, then it doesn't really matter. You're not actually losing cards. So I like the Incarnation mechanic too. I might be okay with not seeing more of this because I'm a little worried that depending on what they release, especially with the addition of Rook Egg now being able to stay in the Alice cluster, since it's not getting rotated out, like Red's still gonna have Guinevere and Rook Egg, which are both extremely strong. I probably wouldn't want to see the Incarnation come back next set unless the other sets get like Incarnation and it's not just red and black. So typically, it's a mechanic I wouldn't mind not having much of anymore, other than like Adam Broly and some other cards, but I don't want the game to stay too fast. And then Blazer, the Eater of Dimensions. Blazer was, I think, like my most hated card at one point. It was just so strong, and there was so many like little answers to it. Every game would get to the point where you're both at like a stalemate, and you have like one card in your hand, and they have one card in their hand, and neither of you can really push for damage. And they have a Blazer removed, and so it doesn't matter because every turn they're just summoning a Blazer, swinging at you. If you use a kill spell, and you know your kill spell's wasted, they just go summon Blazer, attack again. And it was one of those cards that were just so insanely hard to deal with, and it pushed for so much damage and was able to remove so much. And now I think it's great because I get to use an Alcyrus, and I really like the interaction between that in this deck. But originally when this card came out, it's one of those cards I also think just with time, this card would just get better and better. Because if we keep seeing cards, card games typically try to make a lot of like Ruke kind of cards eventually to kind of make up for like trying to speed it up. So they want to make cards that replace themselves. And so going to the graveyard and, you know, gaining an effect or whatever that way is like a big part of I see in a lot of card games. And so anything that just has like removal of everything to remove from play area seems like it's always going to be really strong. So I think with Blazer leaving, it's kind of a bummer because I wouldn't want to lose this card. But in the same way, I'd rather see maybe a less stronger card that can come back from remove from play. Or like Alice Cyrus does the whole remove from play thing now, so I don't feel like it's a big deal because we have that kind of genre or theme or whatever going with him anyway. And then Glimpse of Kaguya. This is one of those spells that you don't really see used in any deck other than like Reflect, but it is a really, really good searchable card that you can just like in every Reflect mirror, if you had Glimpse of Kaguya and they didn't, and you both have like 3 Change the Worlds, if they go like, you know, bounce something, recover, search, and you search Glimpse and counter it, and they don't have the counters to be able to counter Glimpse, like you're winning that game. It was just one of those cards that completely shut down your opponent by negating the Reflect, and they were just stuck not being able to do anything, and it was so great. Like it was just like, it's just one of those cards that if you use it perfectly, which is essentially only with Reflect because you can always put it away and just search it when needed, but it's one of those cards that were really underrated because once this card goes off, it could really be a game changer. It's one of those type of counters where it negates the one thing that until Galapis we didn't have answers to, which is just activates. Tsukiyomi too, but Tsukiyomi of course doesn't affect J-Rulers. So it was just such a good card, especially because you drew as well. It just like replaced itself. So you like got to completely shut down their play, and then like you still have advantage. It just didn't matter. And then Sign to the Future. When this card first came out, I completely didn't really mind it. I'm pretty sure when this card came out. I don't remember exactly when. I'm pretty sure I'm right on the time. But when this card came out, I believe we didn't have the Chant standby change already. So you weren't able to use this as an instant from your hand. I believe that rule started taking into effect when Kaguya got errated, and they were kind of talking about that all at the same time. I feel like that's when like stealth monsters were being revealed, like for the SKL previews. So I feel like I'm pretty sure like it was right after MOA, and right before SKL that they said like, oh, there's all these stealth monsters, but you know, Kaguya's errated, you can now set those for 1 as well. And then that's when they also said you can also use them from your hand. So I think the reason why this card was kind of a sleeper card is because you had to actually set it for 2 and you couldn't use it from your hand. But even now, like, this is one of the most relevant removal cards the Light has ever received. It's just like, if you compare this to like Grand Cross, it's harder to use essentially because Grand Cross just works right away. If they have, well, I guess it's still like they have a requirement for Grand Cross because you have to remove their biggest monster, and if you have the biggest one, you can't use it. But Sign to the Future is just like, if they have like all this little stuff and like a Gwyvern and Arthur and like a Shion deck, and then you just Sign in the Future Gwyvern and Arthur, that sets them behind so much. Like, if that goes through and they can't negate it, like, you're essentially coming back from like taking more than half your life next turn, and it's crazy because it's like 2 costs. So I think Sign in the Future was insane. And then Exceed the Ancient Magic. This was our 3rd counter that we received, and it was the first counter we had that did like both. So everyone was always confused because everything is a spell in the chase. But so when Cake Zone came out, people were like, oh, so can I stop creatures because they're spells? And it was like, no, because they're normal spells. And I mean, because they're summon spells. And then people would be like, oh, can Zeke's, you know, cancel spells? But it's like, no, because it only stops summon spells. And everyone was kind of confused about that. And then so when Exceed came out, it was perfect because it was just cancel target spell. And it's like, everything's a spell in the chase. So this just negates everything. And if you controlled Feasting, you got to draw a card. So it, like, the problem with control has always been that if you use all your counters really like quickly, and your opponent's putting too much pressure and you're forced to continuously use them, you eventually fall behind because you're not really doing anything if they're playing multiple cards and you're only countering like a 1 every now and then. But with Exceed, it was like you got to stop their best play and then you replace it. So if you draw into like a Zeke's and then you Zeke's their next card, it doesn't feel like you're falling behind because you're getting more cards. So I really like Exceed. It's a little, I think, slow for this format, but it might actually not be so bad. I might be trying it out. I've been kind of trying to make 6 Ages again. I might actually make a profile on that as well. I kind of had like a cool idea and concept to use either Reflect or Kaguya 3. Maybe actually even Gil. I haven't decided on the ruler. If anything, it's probably going to be able to side. But yeah, I think Exceed is just really good as well. And then Flame of the Outer World. This card was the greatest card I think that ever came out during its time. Flame of the Outer World was just, a lot of people hated it because they thought it was too good, but it was so relevant for how annoying Abdul was at one point. Being able to like play in the mirror, or like there was people that played like the green Abdul build where it was like all green and then like with splash of red, splash of black. But then there was people that played like the black green and then red black Abdul, so you had black at all times and you can use cards like Spiral. And I remember when I was playing the Persona Grim deck I made for that 1 AGP, I think the first AGP like ever. I was playing the Grim Persona deck and I had Gruus Ballesta in it, and like people were like so confused because I was using like I was using Abdul's deck but with Grim, and it was essentially just to have like Cheshire, so it was like consistent, and I could side into stuff like Grim the Avenger and whatnot. And every single time they had an Abdul and they were like, ha ha ha, your Cheshires won't work, I would just go Gruus Ballesta -2 and then like Flame, like die Abdul. Like, it just felt so good. Like, being able to just completely, like, they can't cake zone it because they were always sitting on like 300 cake zones. Every time you played an Abdul player, like if you were the Abdul player, you'd never have your Zeeks or cake zones. But if you like play against an Abdul player, the one time they flip, they magically have like 8 stones and like 4 of each counter in their hand. And you're just like, I don't know how this is happening. So being able to just Gruus Ballesta, and it's like, sure, no counters because like, you know, nobody ran Glimpse or anything, and then they're like, okay, that's fine, and then you just go Flame, and this is all like on your draw phase, so you just recover and then keep going. And it was just such a good feeling. I think Flame, like a card like Flame where you can't respond to it, I actually think cards like this are really relevant, and I think the only one we've seen since this is Seal of Wind and Light, where if you pay the Awakening, they can't respond. I'm pretty sure that's the only one, but I might be wrong. I feel like there's like one more that I like forgot about because it's like a random card. But I'm pretty sure that's it. So Flame and Seal, I'm gonna validate it. Flame and Seal are the only cards you can't respond to, and I actually think that's healthy. I think that certain cards like that should. I mean, I guess it's a little better for Seal because you actually have to pay a cost, so you can argue that it's not kind of like free. But with Flame, I feel like it was relevant because you needed a way to remove. Like if Flame was respondable, and in this meta even, you wouldn't be able to kill Lancelots because their reflex would just negate it, and that would just be more frustrating. Like I think Flame's good at where it is. Like, or if if they had a Lancelot with Necromancy and they declare an attack and you Flame now, it just dies, but they can like +2/+2, and then you wouldn't want to use your Flame anymore, and then like they also do 700 damage. So I think not being able to actually respond to Flame is like super necessary, especially because it's like a 2-color card. It's like it's not that easy to use. So I think it was just like I'm this is actually like one of the cards in the set that I don't want to go. I'm hoping they like reprint this common in like Vingolf 2 or something just so that we get it back. I really like they said Featsing and Zero are kind of getting reprints in the next set. Not like reprints, but like new effects to them. They're just going to be like relevant in the lore. So I'm hoping that those still have Quickcast because that would be really, really cool. So I can assume Quickcast is coming back, unless they like have different powers for some reason and they just changed them completely. But as far as like Flame, we have no word on like any other unresponsive cards. So, and then lastly, the bane of everyone's existence, Split Heaven and Earth. Uh, this card uh, this card is just bad. It's not good. This is the reason why I put a post on Facebook recently. I don't know if I talked about this in the tap video too, but I put a post talking about me wanting Reflect to be +1/+1 instead of +2/+2 because I felt as though that change would make it so that every kind of kill spell would add up in the game and he wouldn't be able to use the +2/+2 to escape death. It would, and then like also Lancelot would be 9/9 with Necromancy, and you wouldn't be able to get the 1,000 effect for free. You'd have to like pay additional red. And everyone kept saying that, oh, you want to kill Red Rush, and then Alice World is going to be like dominant. But I truly don't think that's true. Like as of right now, like how I said, I want to build a 6H deck. Realistically, I would want to use either Gil Lapis or Kaguya 3 for that deck, because if I use Kaguya 3, I have Moonshades and Moonlights, and my mana curve is absolutely perfect, and then I can use like Apollo and stuff for some of the Awakening ideas I had for the deck, and like that's cool. Like to me, like in my head, I'm like, all right, cool, 6H deck, here we go. I don't need Rulers Moria. I don't have to play a million of these like Regalia cards just to get Rulers Moria. I can play a perfect mana curve of Kaguya, and I'm fine. And then I tell myself, but then, even if I negate all of like if I get to Zeeks and Sea Levite and win all the main creatures and I barely take damage from red, they're gonna flip Reflect, they're gonna search Split, and I'm gonna lose the Split. Like, because I've already used up all my counters earlier. And that sucks. Like, the existence of this card is what I think makes it so that you can't build against Alice World, because I don't think Alice World is unbeatable. I think there's actually a lot of decks out there that can do really good against Alice World. Like Dark Alice has a really good matchup. I think Gil Lapis could have a really good matchup, especially if they're relying on Change the World, which a lot of the deck does. So if you like set up Gil Lapis, just it starts into play, they can't already tap their Change the Worlds unless they pay. It slows them down quite a lot. And all of these decks, I think that could beat Alice World don't matter because they lose to Red Rush, and they lose to Red Rush because of this. So that's my main issue with Split, and I feel like a lot of people are like misunderstanding my point. Killing Red Rush isn't relevant because, oh, Red Rush is too strong. That's not the point. Red Rush alone isn't particularly too strong. Alice World has no problem with Red Rush. You drop a robe or two and they can't do anything for the rest of the game. If they have to like hope to hit their green that they're using for originally Persea to like side in Elvish Bowmans, it still doesn't even matter, because the second they end their turn, and if they try to use one of Reflex effects to like restand or scry or +2, well, they wouldn't +2 at the end of turn, but the second they use like the draw effect to filter, you just chase Green Cat and kill Elvish Bowman and they can't get it off anyway. Like there's so many answers to the cards that stop Robe, but it's so much easier for you to set up Robe than it is for them to have the answers for it. And even if they're using that time to set up the answers for Robe of the Fire Rat, that's just buying you more time of not getting rushed anyway. So if you can get to late game, they're not going to be able to respond to all of Alice's World's field with Law of Silence and playing Alice World to gain additional turns and stuff anyway. So I don't think Red is too good just in general because of how good Alice World is. I just think it's too good against every other deck that could be good against Alice World. So just because of Split, literally just because of Split, like every single time you're at like 1100 life, you're tapping for like a 4th stone, which puts you right in Split's range. And even if you fully took care of their board, you've been controlling the board state with control the entire time, you have a full advantage of like Featsings and like anything that's maybe like a kind of, in any control type of card. So you use Zeeks, you Seal of Light of Wind, you've used Featsings, you have like Mana Dorks on the field, maybe like a Moonbreeze Elf, which is what I would be running if I could play Kaguya. But it's almost like if I play Reflect, I'm forced to play the Elvish Priest. So it just feels like all of these cards would do decent against red, but I have to hope to have the counter for split or I lose. And the worst part is like if they search split and they use split and I negate split and then they like, and they would search split and flip back. So if they have like 4 stones and they go activate split and you go, sure, I have Seal of Light and Wind, and then they go summon Lancelot, it gets Necromancy +2/+2 attack. Like that's so like, it just puts you behind so much for no reason. Like they didn't do anything. They didn't invest anything outside of getting Necromancy in the graveyard, which that's why I don't think there's a problem with Necromancy, to gain so much advantage. Like all of that is free. The search effect is free because you get the counters for using the 0 cost effects. The 0 cost effects push for way too much damage because the +2/+2 is way too relevant with Lancelot. It makes him totally too strong. Even if you don't have Necromancy and they happen to hit the little red the Pierce Stone, that's another way to get to 1,000 attacks, so that makes it kind of ridiculous as well. And all of that only becomes an issue because of split. If Red Rush was just a really fast deck, it wouldn't matter because everyone knows how to play against really fast decks. You either run a ton of kill spells or you control them with like counters and whatnot. But the searchable split Heaven and Earth is just way too much. And this is one of those cards where like I think with people saying like Reflect needs to be banned, I honestly think it doesn't. I would be really, really happy to see a change. Like, I feel like if Reflect does get a +1/+1 change and rotation happens, I actually could see a lot of people not playing Reflect anymore. And people think that like I'm kind of crazy for that because they always think like, oh, Reflect's always going to be an issue because it plays other rulers' decks better than the ruler does. But that's not particularly true. Like Reflect can't play a Kaguya deck better because he doesn't make the moon into green. And after rotation, it is possible that that kind of might be an issue because you don't have the Moonshades anyway. But even using like Black Moon's Memoria and Moonbreeze Memoria and having all of that be green in Kaguya was able to create a deck like the Angel deck that somebody used to top recently. It was like Celestial Wing Seraph and Lucifer, and they were only able to do that because they can use Mana Dorks early game because all of those moons are also green, which is like specific to Kaguya. And then Gil Lapis can play control decks and whatnot with like, if people start using more Regalias for Ruler's Memoria because we lose all of the dual stones, then Space-Time Collapse becomes so much more relevant because you can remove a monster and you can remove the Regalia, which is the 2-cost spell. And that's something very specific to Gil Lapis. If you're playing Yggdrasil and you want to play a control deck, you're only going to get Alice and Excalibur for free because of Yggdrasil. And if you're playing Alisiris, or Ifrit is only good because it adds 2 cards, and it only adds 2 cards if you have Alisiris. So all of these older decks wouldn't be outclassed by Reflect. It's only an issue now because we have all of the older cards, and the older cards happen to outpace the newer cards so much because of the kind of, well, they're kind of work together, but like for example, Thunder and Split are from CMF, and both Thunder and Split are the reasons why sometimes when you finally gain control, you either get double Thunder to face or you get Split and then you lose. If both of those cards get rotated out, with the addition of Cthulhu as well, Red Rush is no longer in the place they used to be. They literally can't do anything. Sure, they still have Lancelot, and if they want to be able to use Reflect, Lancelot, and Necromancy to get 1,000 in, that's still not that bad because let's say if you're using Kaguya, you can side Angel of Wisdom, and now you can catch up because not only are you removing their cards, but you're not expecting a Rook Egg into 4 Cthulhu's next turn to your face. So I really feel like the problem isn't particularly Red Rush, or I don't want people to get like discouraged to play creative decks. I think rotation is actually going to help a lot. A lot of people in the comments have been saying that rotation isn't healthy for a game and everything, but it really is. You have to understand that a card game like Yu-Gi-Oh, for example, and I don't mean this in any bad way. I particularly don't like Yu-Gi-Oh anymore, but it's totally fine for the people that play it. But a card game like Yu-Gi-Oh, so if you make a deck that costs you like $1,000, like a deck like Cosmos when it first came out, when like Dark Destroyers were like $140. For anyone that doesn't know, there was a card in Yu-Gi-Oh that you would have to play 3 of because there's only 3 of in that game. and this card was $140 at one point. And because I work at CoreTCG, you might think like, oh, you know, people never spend that much money, but they do. When that card first came out, there was infinite people buying 3 of that card. And so you were to start your deck with 3 of your 40 card deck, you're spending $420 like plus tax. So that was just 3 cards of your 40 card deck. Let alone that they have like an extra deck of 15 cards and then a side deck of 15 cards and then everything else. So you spend $500, and then the way Yu-Gi-Oh does it is there's no rotation, but there's ban lists. So let's say the ban list happens, or what happened recently in a more realistic situation is they reprinted that card in a very easy to way get, and now that card is like a $40 card. So the person lost $240 essentially by losing $80 3 times on each card. So if people are against rotation because they feel like, oh, the game's forcing me to buy new cards, like technically the games that don't have rotation are still specifically doing that. Yu-Gi-Oh banning your entire deck because it's too good, and now you're forced, like if Alice World was a deck in Yu-Gi-Oh, like Morgiana, Cheshire, and Green Cat would have been like banned, Adam Broly would be set to 1, and like Reflect would be banned, and you would have like spent $200 on an Alice World deck, and now you can't use any of it. So I'd much rather know as a player that I'm going to have like certain cards rotate out at a specific date, so me as like the money holder can decide if I want to spend my money on this, knowing that it's going to be gone, and make that decision myself, rather than hopefully hope that my deck that happens to perform really well doesn't get hit by like some kind of ban list and set me behind for no reason. Like I invested my money and time into that deck and I got punished for it because it's very good. Like that doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make sense to me of why rotation is bad. And a lot of people use Vanguard as an example, but you have to understand that Vanguard is a completely different game. Like I play Vanguard like for fun. I literally have only played like 10 games maybe, but I only play it for fun at work with like one of my coworkers, and I have a blast when I play Vanguard. And I think they only have like 2 cards banned or something. Like there's like almost no ban list in that game, and there's no rotation. But they release sets like every like other day. Like I swear Vanguard for some reason has like a new box coming out like every other weekend. And of course if they keep adding cards to every single deck, it's going to be good and easy to catch up, but there's of course still those decks that like perform better than the other decks. So just because like you can make a deck one day and then a week and a half later a new box comes out and another deck is already better than it, and essentially like you might still enjoy playing your deck and that's totally fine, and you didn't like lose money for it, but it doesn't particularly mean that there's nothing wrong with that system either. If there's like, for example, I get a playset of every single card in Force of Will so I can make these videos for people, and if I have all of the cards I can play any deck, I can make any video, and I like having them. Like I even have all the Valhalla cards and most people know that, and that's great. And like if I had to buy however 4 of every card every other weekend because like every other month there's like a new set or something, I wouldn't be able to physically like keep up with that financially. And you know, it might work for some people, but you can't simply just compare 2 games and go this is bad and this is good. Like I think rotation is always the best way to do it because it keeps the game extremely fresh, and it lets you reprint cards that might have been too strong before, but you kind of tweak a couple of effects on it now, and now it's really playable. Or a card that might not have been that good before, you tweak a couple of effects on it, give it a new name, and now it's a pretty relevant card. So you always keep the same structure with just adding new mechanics, but you never like have to go insane to make it seem like so much better than what happened before. Yu-Gi-Oh quite often power creeps, and I think that that's an issue, and I like that, you know, Force of Will doesn't. I like that, you know, Kaguya had to pay a cost to be able to negate something like an enter, whereas Abdul had it for free. And I like that Seal of Light and Wind needs that Moon Awakening to be able to not be countered, because that might have been way too strong if it wasn't. Like, I just like that. And I don't know, I mean, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and I'm totally cool with that for anyone that might not think rotation's a good idea. But I at least hope that you can see both arguments to it, because I definitely do. I mean, as someone who owns 4 of every copy of CMF through MOA, that's a lot of money that I spent that is now going to be unplayable as well. So I can definitely see where those people are coming from. But will I sacrifice that money and that income that I worked really hard for to be able to play a better game that's going to be more fair and I'm going to enjoy more? Yeah, like I don't mind. If I have to sacrifice that, if that's what it takes to not get to the point that I did with Yu-Gi-Oh, where I just was spending all that money and getting all these banned cards anyway, and wasn't having a good time because of it, then sure, like if I'm gonna lose money one way or another, I might as well be enjoying the game. And that might be a silly way to look at it, but when you get into any hobby and you invest any money into anything, it's totally up to you. And I just think it's like silly to not at least see both arguments. It's totally fine to be able to just pick a side or not pick a side at all and just stay neutral. But I think it's important to understand where both sides come from. So I'm not exactly sure how I breached off into that like little, I guess, conversation about Red Rush and rotation in general. I guess I just wanted to answer a lot of questions I feel like people might have about cards like Split and why it's an issue. Because originally when Split was released, I like how I just totally went back into it like nothing happened. I don't know why, but when Split was first released, it was because Gretel was a little too strong. Being able to just continuously get all these stones and play all these colors was just ridiculously strong. And I feel like this card was meant to punish those players so that you kind of slowed it down. But in this day, it just ended up being punishing anyone that's playing anything. So yeah, generally, if you guys have any questions or want to add to either my little rant towards the end or just anything in general, make sure you do in the comment section below. I think it's really important for people to be able to discuss. And once again, like, please just try to discuss. I think in the tap video, some people were getting a little like aggressive and saying like, well, oh no, you're wrong, like rotation sucks, blah, blah, blah. Don't do that. Don't be that guy. Like, everyone's entitled to their opinion. You don't have to force someone to think the way you think. It's totally fine. Just kind of, try to understand their point and add to yours so that they might understand yours as well. I think keeping Forcible as like that kind of community is a lot better than just like flaming everyone 24/7. So yeah, leave a comment if you have anything to say about anything I discussed in the video or anything that you might think is an issue with these older sets, or why you're excited to see them go or why you're not excited to see them go. And if you guys haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do, because I have Mo's video that might be combined with Vingolf, I'm not sure yet, coming either Thursday or Friday, and I'll definitely catch you guys next time.